I guess slightly more acceptable to make fun of that, 10 years ago or whatever. So I was just like, the kids are right there. This will be funny. So
I think Rush Hour is older than 10 years.
Whatever. I don't know. I didn't carbon date the thing, okay? So
listen, 30 years ago is not the 70s anymore.
Yeah, I'm in my mid-30s. Everything was 10 years ago, and if it wasn't, I don't want to know about it, okay? So you keep that was my childhood shit to yourself. So.
That was my childhood. I watched it several times as a single-digit age child.
See, it's a good thing you don't have two very obvious indicators of time growth that are living in your house or anything.
Yeah, but guess what? They're less than 10 years old, so everything is
now
10 years. Yeah, I know. That's fine. So I only know that V for Vendetta is older than 10 years because, we're talking about it. So, but
16 years old.
Yep.
At this point. Man, I've seen this movie a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Couple for sure.
I don't know when I started watching it every year, but it's been a while. So
it's your annual tribute.
Yeah.
Do you watch it on the 5th of November?
Yeah.
Frequently, but not always. Because I don't think I've watched it the last couple of years, but
it's always on a movie channel somewhere on that date, I think. Just,
Right. I forget, like, it was even in the trivia, they were like, in 2021, they played it on the 4th of November. I'm like, it's the 5th right now. Who updated this trivia? But
probably the people who work at DV Tropes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they have a full-time staff updating everything.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah. Probably doesn't work because they'd have to use citations and references.
Boom. Evil.
Yep.
I don't know. This movie doesn't seem to be stimulating the conversation like it should.
Yeah.
I was just catching that last bit of that tournament.
It's because the League of Legends tournament was more important than the movie that he decided we need to watch.
It definitely was more important.
He was rooting for China. Leave him alone.
No, I was rooting for Korea. So yeah, V for Vendetta.
So,
what do you guys think?
Huh?
I love it. It's still a perfect movie.
It's not perfect.
You think so?
I mean, it's hard because I stand by this movie as a perfect movie, but I can think of things that would make it better, but I still think it's so good that for me it's a perfect
think of things
movie.
that would make it better, and therefore it isn't perfect. It has not achieved perfection.
It's perfect enough.
That's not the qualification.
It is perfect. I don't care. It's perfect. This is my Chinatown then.
All right. So I'm curious about what do you enjoy about the movie, right? Because there's maybe some different background in the cultures. Like some of the trivia was talking about how Americanized the story was, that it was very much more, against the fascist government and a bunch of other stuff like that. Alan Moore was complaining about that.
Alan Moore is the one who wrote it, right? I don't recall that. I mean, granted, I never read the graphic novel, but that kind of stuff wouldn't surprise me if it seeped through into his work because he's American. So, at least somewhat.
Right. So, Andreas, what do you like about the movie?
Oh, I mean, I think it's very well acted and casted. It's the story. I love the story, right? And it's a little. It can be a little ham-fisted, I guess. I mean, it's not. It's very. I would say kind of obvious in a way for most of the movie, but I mean, I like it. It's a good story. It's always a relevant story, socially and politically.
Since the early 2000s, anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. This one even had a pandemic in it.
Right.
It's entertaining. It's that's where one of my few criticisms is it's almost a little. I feel like it's almost a little too fast paced. I would have loved a little more character interact. Some of there's a bit of it takes place over a year, right? And there's quite a bit of time skipping. I would just like a little bit more time with some of the characters that just kind of get skipped over.
Gotcha.
Another thing I noticed, at least while watching it from HBO Max on my TV this time, instead of using headphones that I usually watch it on my computer, it's the audio mixing, I guess, or whatever you call it. It's not that great, actually. I realized, or maybe I just need better speakers on for my TV. But at least watching it on my TV, the audio was not like that good.
Right. You just pissed off like an entire industry of people that are just going to tell you your settings are wrong and whatever, because I've seen so many of those accusations, and it's like, I mean, I get that it was mixed for a theater, but like then there should be some additional processing to to make that work for your home setup. So before we get too far from this being relevant, I just wanted to correct EG that Alan Moore was very much English. So I just going to throw that out there. Yeah, he was born in Northampton.
I guess I probably should have guessed that because it's, Moore with an E and that,
Yeah. Started writing for British Underground. He might have moved to the US, sure, but I use English.
Before we got hate mail from somebody, I just wanted to throw
you know what it was? I was thinking of Frank Miller, who may also be British, but I don't think.
And see, I think pre-show we were talking about Frank Miller was the other guy that I couldn't remember. I know, throw eggs at me for that. But I was like, there's somebody like Alan Moore that like every time their shit gets adapted, he gets pissed off, and I just couldn't get the name. Yeah, so
Frank Miller is American.
Yay!
Yes, good job. 50%. EG just is going to say everybody's American. He'll eventually be right. So Jackie Chan, American. So
American, I guess.
If Rush Hour's not American, I don't know what is.
Well, half of it is, but yeah. So I mean, just talking through like some of your points. Like, ironically, one of the things that made me not want to say that it was a perfect movie, especially early on, was the acting. Like, so you got Natalie Portman, you've got Hugo Weaving coming off of some of their biggest movies, certainly at the time, right? Like Star Wars was not that long ago. You've got Lord of the Rings had just wrapped up a couple of years, prior to that and everything like that. So in a lot of, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So a lot of their blockbuster, big billboard movies had just come out. And then like Hugo Weaving is amazing, despite the fact that he's literally wearing a mask the entire time.
It's not even him some of the time.
Yeah, or in the dark. Yeah, I saw that too. That was interesting.
He was probably tired after The Matrix. He didn't want to keep doing it.
Yeah. But Natalie Portman, when I watched it the first time, it just felt so flat because she's just so bland the entire time. But like this time, after, I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it. After all the torture and everything like that, and she finally gets set free, and she just kind of like breaks down and has an asthma attack. Like I teared up a little bit, and I'm like, all right. So it hits differently later for sure. After I've seen this like probably a dozen times easily, but. So it was interesting because like the acting came up in my opinion, but then the action kind of went down a little bit, and the action was like some of the stuff that I loved the most, early in the movie, like the fact that he's basically superhuman in a way. Like he's like more or less
some sort of mutant, right?
Yeah, he's kind of like.
Basically a super soldier. It's the closest.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, him and Deadpool should fight, right? I mean, Deadpool's still going to win because immortal, literally. But, like, it's a very similar kind of origin story, like, including the fire and, everything like that. He's otherwise, got superhuman strength and reflexes. And they really show that because, again, it's 2005. We've got to recapture the Matrix. So you get bullet time and all of that stuff.
With knives.
Which is fun. But, yeah. Bullocks, we've got guns. It's such a cheesy, stupid line, and it was always bad in the first place. But it's so well answered.
It's worked.
No, and it's great because it's the character, right? Like the character doesn't believe in shit. He just knows that if he throws enough dudes with guns at it, it'll solve his problem. And like so, a lot of those lines get fixed in some ways by the foil, by whoever's responding to him, right? Because like this is one that. I'm going to talk about because we're here anyway, but it's like, it's like, no, what you have is guns, and that the hope when your magazines are empty, that I won't be standing here. Paraphrased a little bit. It's such a great response to a stupid line from a stupid character. And like the other one that comes to mind that gets saved by the character's reaction to the line is V's opening monologue for like 5 fucking minutes, that he says a V word like 48 times or whatever it is. And then Evie's like, she's just sitting there dumbstruck.
You're a crazy person.
Like, are you a crazy person? Oh, I'm quite sure they'll say so, And I remember even the first time that I saw that, I'm like, what the shit is going on here? And she just pulls it right back into the movie, because you disassociate while you're listening to this whole thing. You're like, I don't even know what half of those words mean. Like, how did he just not only pull them in, but rhyme them at times? Like,
That's his other superpower.
Yeah. Well, I mean, clearly when you spend 20 years hiding downstairs, you just practice in the mirror or whatever, but
his mirror that has a bunch of words in Latin that only begin with V.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. I love the movie. I kind of like Constantine, right? Like, these fit in a similar niche, and it's ironic because like I also have like a DVD collection where they're in the same box and whatever, but it's like they're great and I love a lot about them, but I don't know if they're perfect, so
I actually think probably Natalie Portman and Rachel Weisz, they're about the same in that they both seem to be acting like they're going through the motions in this one, except that it makes more sense for Natalie Portman's character because she's just trying to essentially survive the world and just keep her head down. And then she gets the extra step later. So
yeah, I mean, her accent is still bad.
Well, it's crazy because the parallels are, Natalie Portman's character Evie is in a post-apocalyptic dystopia, and Rachel Weisz's character's in LA. So really, they're just like nothing
perfectly the same.
Like she was just driving in traffic. That's what her problem is.
One has demons and hellfire, and the other is Constantine.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that I thought was interesting that I caught from the trivia this time was that James Purfoy was actually going to be V, and had actually filmed for a couple of weeks. Did you guys catch anything with that? So he's like. What, Prince Edward from Knight's Tale. He's he's the main he's the character that hires the guy in Altered Carbon. Like I can't remember the character's name, but it's like
very accomplished actor. Actually, I really like him whenever he's in something, and I think his
the
voice
other guy that looks
very
just
good.
like Thomas Jane.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, they get all the bits.
Exactly. Like they're kind of like the same, like really good actor. That's not really as high up as I think they should be.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So
I think his
I
voice
thought it
would
was
have been very good.
Yeah, it would have been different. His voice is different. Like Hugo Weaving's performance with his voices is very good. It's what carries the movie, but it would have been very different for Purfoy to do it. And it would make me interested to see what was that like. And it sounds like he left because he had a different interpretation of what V should have been, and he wanted to do that character differently. So that would also have been a different version of the story. I
understood it more from what I read, that he had trouble acting the role when you couldn't use his face. Like he didn't feel like he could do enough with his body and his voice.
Yeah,
it's tough.
And I will say, I don't know exactly which parts were dubbed over by Hugo, but it can't have been that many since he was only there for 4 or 6 weeks, depending on where I read it. Right. The physical acting for V is really good.
Right.
Like he can't use his face at all at any point in the movie. The only point where they can use his face is when he's got the makeup on, is pretending to be that black what's this guy?
Rockwood. Yeah.
Rockwood, that's how it was.
Yeah.
That's really the only time. I think story-wise, like one of the parts I found a little hard to believe was him keeping her in the belief that she was in the prison alone and being multiple people. That was really hard to see how he managed to do that.
Yeah.
I guess.
It's just something that you accept to enjoy
if he's
and move
crazy
on.
enough and he's that good enough of an actor, and let's face it, when you're in that situation and you're getting tortured, you're not really in the greatest state to notice irregularities necessarily.
Yeah, I think they show that very well in the movie. How the guard at the end of the hall, I'm fairly sure they actually have a real actor standing there, and then as they switch when she comes closer to a doll, how it's just a doll.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like how they did that. Like I was like, oh, he looks real. Switching camera, he's not real.
Yep.
Right. And it was something that I got from the trivia as well, that apparently, like in the comics, like, you know, sometimes she would be interrogated by a dummy with a microphone in it or whatever, right? So that helps explain a little bit more how they got, you know, the council member Creedy to do the interrogation. Yeah, Creedy, thank you. I was going to call him Finger because, you know, that's the department he runs. But yeah, that's how they got him in there. But then there's other times where it's very clearly Hugo Weaving. You know, it's his silhouette, it's his shadow, it's, you know, stuff like that, which was fun. Yeah, so I don't know, man. Like that whole scene and like some of the parts though that were so good about it in the movie were that, like, a lot of the background characters and a lot of the extras and the people that are just kind of like, you know, like wall dressing, like Ruth and whatever, that they pop up in the movie more and more in different places. So like you've got the little girl who does the tagging with the glasses and everything like that. She becomes, you know, very iconic for the movie in a way. And like seeing her and the lesbian couple and a bunch of the other kids that you see basically as extras just doing the world building, they all show up at the end, or they all show up at multiple different points in the movie when you just have people in the background and you're like, well, wait a minute, you know, like we see him, and like the end is great because like almost everybody is there, right? Like even the inspector's like main deputy or sidekick or whatever, he's there. Hugo Weaving's supposedly there. Like I thought I saw him, but I couldn't. Yeah, I couldn't catch him. Yeah, I couldn't catch him on the way back, so they must have hidden him a little better. But yeah, like most of the characters are there if they're not elsewhere, right? So they didn't have like Evie and the inspector in the crowd that I'm aware of or anything like that. But you had a lot of those other, you know, characters from the background present, and even some of the party members were like, you know, main government people, you know, that would have otherwise been there. So I thought that was neat. I don't know. It's got a lot of good little flavors for that. So director at EG, what did you guys not like? What would you have improved? I guess, you know,
the lead inspector at the end just randomly finding it was always annoying to me. Like, I mean, they try to lampshade it a little bit where he's like, oh, you know, you've been looking for a year, you think you're finally going to find it tonight, and then he does.
Right.
It's like, all right. And
it's he was always the last place you look.
I go back and forth with him, the actor. I feel like they probably could have gotten somebody better, but he wasn't terrible.
Right. I mean, like, he starts out and he's already, like, depressed. I've been a cop too long. And then he's got this, right? And so you definitely get different things. Like, he's most animated when he stops believing, like, in a way, right? Where he's having his conversations with his deputy. And, like, the one where he's like, you know, I went out to Lark Hill last night and, you know, like I had a feeling like I saw everything tied together, what was, what will be. And he's like, well, so do you know what happens? Well, no, it's just a feeling. It's just such a funny moment. And then I caught too, like this time for the first time I caught that they like, you actually see the fight scene unfolding during his montage where he's kind of talking over it. And the trivia said that there was a scene with like her, with Evie having flowers and the inspector behind her, like, and they were like, ooh, what if they got together? And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. But
I think they just misread what happened as a dumb person.
Right. Yeah, like with V on the train and whatever. But yeah. So, but still, like it was just good storytelling. But I agree with you mostly. Like mostly the inspector is just kind of flat and just whatever. But
yeah, he's very static.
I think it's kind of his role. Like in his case, I forgive it. Whereas like Evie is supposed to be this very young, you know, defiant character. And I mean, even before, you know, like the torture scenes and stuff, like her shit is very subdued, right? And she's just kind of, you know, just flat for most of it. But
yeah. I like Stephen Fry's character better.
Dude, he's so good in this. Like he's
Stephen
so
Fry
good.
is really good at acting. Yeah, I wish his character wasn't in part used up as a PSA of don't hate gay people. it bothered me more in the time that I haven't watched the movie and then I watched it again. It wasn't as much as I remembered it being, but it was just this, like, everything stopped to say, don't hate gay people. It's like, I get it. I don't need that. I agree with you.
In 2005, you needed it more.
But I also think it was a little better because, one, it shows that even someone as popular and what you would call affluent and protected as him is not safe from this shit, number one. And number two, even at the end, they made it like he makes a point to mention it's not even really about the gay thing. It was the Quran that set them over the edge with him.
Right.
So it was like once they found a Quran in his possession, they were like, no.
Right. Yeah, because V mentions that, you know, like, I thought they were just going to arrest him and whatever, but then they found the Quran and they had him executed, you know, so, but, yeah, just, I don't know, because, like, to me, Stephen Fry is such a goofball, and, like, I don't know if I just haven't seen, like, enough of his other stuff, right? So to have him just have these very down-to-earth, you know, character-building moments with Natalie Portman's character, Evie, you know, was just very powerful, you know, and just to the point where it's like part of it too is, like, at the time I didn't realize he was actually gay as well, right? So he starts talking about his experience, and then you find out, and it's like, yeah, man, that was probably a very powerful moment for him in general, you know, and that sort of thing. But having him play at the, you know, I'm the older, rich, famous playboy. I'm, you know, in my 40s, 50s, whatever, and a bachelor. So obviously I'm entertaining the ladies, because if I'm not, yeah, you know, it's not going to be very hard to figure out what's going on, you know? So just that whole twist as well. And, like, finding out that he was who she was going to meet that time that she got ambushed by the Fingermen and everything like that. But, just good storytelling in general and great acting from him, in my opinion. And then you get to see him be a goofball with the whole Benny Hill yakety sax, you know, thing, which I thought was great that they had Tom Hurd actually play the role and everything. Right. So, yeah. Thank you. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Even a lot of the other side characters, you know, that the Alex Jones, Bill O'Reilly guy that he kills first, and the bishop.
Right.
You know, they're very good. They're very good very quickly at, like, oh, okay, I hate you. This is, and this is what is being allowed in this, you know, this system.
Right. Yeah. $200,000 a month for a priest. Like, how did nobody be like, he's just a priest at a detention facility? Like, it's the doctor making that much? Like, holy crap, man. You know, like, yeah, that, talk about red flags and ethics violations. Like, jeez.
I like before moving away from Stephen Fry, the like, movie making wise, the scene they made with her under the bed and him getting caught with the flashback from the parents earlier. I thought that was like really, really good.
Yeah.
And John Hurt, as just like, he's just so well casted in this role.
He is perfectly casted for it, definitely. And he can do very little while being very entertaining. He knows how to do that skill so well that it doesn't take much for him to just make the scene. So
it's his voice, man. His voice is just iconic to me. And, you know, like, as it progresses, you see him get more haggard and, like, bags under his eyes, and his eyes start twitching and shit while he's talking. And, like, one of his final, you know, monologues where it's like, I want to say it's the one where it's like, you know, well, what happens if they do blow up the building? Well, that's not going to happen. Well, yeah, I know, but maybe we should talk about it anyway. And he just starts, like, all but frothing at the mouth, and, like, his eyes starts twitching, and it's like, the only thing that will be different is that instead of a newspaper, I'll be reading Mr. Creedy's resignation, you know, and just, like, his buildup during that scene. You know, this is definitely one of the roles. Like, he's in so many other good movies, like, when you go back, but, like, this was one of the early roles for me that kind of solidified.
Like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
You know, yeah. What? He's in that one? Are you for real? See, I blocked that movie. There's only two people I know, and I remember the fridge scene and something about a crystal skull. But yeah. But anyway, so yeah, he's just so good in the movie and everything like that, and for such a limited role otherwise. And it was one of the criticisms like I read from the trivia where it was like, oh well, he's more of a weasel and a sniveling man and blah blah blah, and you don't really get that from the movie. It was like, you absolutely get that from the movie if you're plugged in all the way to the end. Like, he starts groveling and whining as soon as he's out of his box. Like, he's a classic keyboard warrior where he's in his glass house and he's protected and everything like that. So he'll say whatever the hell he wants to say. And then as soon as you get him, he basically just immediately starts groveling and begging because he knows he's fucked.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, he was the whole time. He was this bigger than life, even on the screen. And then once he's brought down to earth,
movie-wise, really great. Like the scenes there, him on the big screen, them sitting there, it's so good.
Yeah, he's the man behind the curtain, and then once you pull it back,
right.
Well, and I also liked that. I liked that that's what him. It will be Mr. Creedy's resignation. So pushes Creedy to betray him, and and it's also that's one of the more plausible, I feel like, story, and like that's most definitely how they were going to get to him, right?
Right.
Is getting someone to betray him.
Yeah, that was absolutely, V's thing, is he set the party upon each other, to get to the point to get, to Sutler. So
I think one of the things but I guess, I mean, there's a reason and a point to why it is the way it is. I kind of wish you knew more about who V was before, but the whole point is you don't, he doesn't know and you don't know. Right. But as a guy who likes the characters in the world, I would really like to know who he was before he lost basically his identity and became V. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see that, but yeah, he literally develops amnesia from the experiments and the accident, or I guess it wasn't really an accident. He presumably blew the place up to escape, or at least to shut it down, and then happened to survive somehow. But yeah, in a way, it doesn't matter, because everything that is V, probably started from when Ruth gave him that letter, up through escaping and 27 years hatching his revenge plot. So for all intents and purposes, he's 27 years old, and all of his history comes from watching the Count of Monte Cristo and learning how to sword fight and throw knives and shit. It's not there is no alter ego, right? At the end of the day, right? He's not Batman. He's not, well, I'm going to take off the mask and go home when this is all over. That was all of it, that was his entire being. And then Evie's kind of monologue at the end, where it's he was you and me and this character and that character. And, he was, the Count of Monte Cristo and all of that stuff. That kind of reinforces it as well. It's he was an amalgamation of all of these victims and heroes and anti-heroes and this vengeance plot, right? But yeah. Anyway, director, you're being very quiet.
She doesn't like fun.
I mean, this movie is fun. I enjoyed a lot of it. It's just, but there's still just, it makes me think I would enjoy the graphic novel more, because the way that V in the movie is described and shown as being that sensitive vigilante, but in the graphic novel, apparently he would have been much more ruthless and a bit more monstrous. I think that would have been more fun. He tortured
this woman for an untold amount of time for a year.
Yeah, but then she liked it.
Okay.
Don't kink shame.
Right. Yeah, she thinks
what's that, Andreas? What's that syndrome that you guys are famous for? So
I know what you're referring to, and I am in fact not from that country. Stockholm Syndrome.
So Stockholm Syndrome. So come on, these are real things. Not to mention that she was probably predisposed in the first place, and I don't know. So
not just he tortured Evie, but he also would have been killing a lot more indiscriminately of people who are just kind of bystanders. He would have been much more of a villain, and it would have been a bit more that gray.
In the comic book, from what I understand, he is an anarchist. This is definitely a different story. He's fighting for freedom and against fascism and oppression. And in the comic book, he's an anarchist. He's just chaotic freedom for everyone. Like it's very different.
See, go ahead.
So it has to do with, I wanted him to be more varied, but I also wanted the party that he was fighting against to be more varied. They're just flatly comically evil, but they must be providing something that's good. I wanted to see what is it, like, more of the comforts that he was providing. What stability? Because people are disappearing all the time.
Well, but that's, have you read 1984? Like,
no.
Do you feel like in 1984 that the government was really providing for their basic needs, or they were taking advantage of them? Because like it's like a carbon copy Big Brother situation where, you know, they're absolutely lying to the public and making, you know, things seem worse overseas than they were, even though a civil war in America with them literally driving tanks through the Midwest is pretty fucking horrific from my perspective. But, you know, that's the whole media blitz that they get in the middle, right? Is that, you know, you need to remind the people that they need us. And they literally go through a montage showing you more in the Civil War in America. We're cutting these rations. There's an outbreak outside the quarantine zone. You know, all of these things, they're controlling them through fear. They don't give them anything. They give them implied or perceived stability even. But like they're rationing them and all of these other things. Like, to me, the question is like, how much of that is based in reality where it's like, okay, great, you overthrew the government. That's not like you're finally going to suddenly have an influx of chocolate. Right. You know, because like that's one of the things they always get you with is like, even in 1984, they focus on the chocolate ration because when you're after people's chocolate, they're really going to pay attention. But I'm joking. But anyway, like that's the point, right? He doesn't provide anything. It's a power grab. You know, they're providing him and he just makes them think that he's protecting them, that this is all, it's all justifiable. It's shit. It's a racket. It's literally the mafia, right? If you don't pay me the protection money, I'm going to break your legs. But just imagine how much worse it was if I wasn't here.
Well, they do. You know, at least in this one, they do provide something initially because they do come up with the drug because they had the cure for this all along.
They invented the problem and the cure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But again, that's a shell game, right? Like,
right. But it is a tangible thing people can point to and be like, all right, they gave us this.
And it could be that maybe the movie just needed to show that a little bit harder because it felt like they were the bad guys do every bad thing. And they were just so flatly evil. Like you said, like you can so very quickly hate these people. But I wanted more of the ambiguity. I wanted at least the characters to suffer through the ambiguity of what they were going to be doing.
Well, so it's also, there's this... Go ahead.
I was going to say, it goes back. Did you read 1984?
No.
Okay. Maybe you should do that. Like, hugely, importantly, vitally, how do you read so much as you and not read 1984? But I'm going to tell you, like, it's not like dude just invented this story, right? He basically lifted that government. Like, even the whole strength through unity thing and, like, all of the slogans and, you know, the double talk and the double plus good, that shit's rooted in 1984. You know, so that's why I'm saying, like, to me, that's not even a speed bump on the way through the story. Because that kind of evil, oppressive, lying government is already established. It was already part of my background anyway, right? It's free online even, so
yeah, like it doesn't take very much. Book.
So read it. But I don't know what to tell you because, like, you know, that's like, you know, like, okay, so we're going to get canceled and then I'm going to have a cruise missile hit my house. So I should go kiss my babies. But like, what is the communist government in China provide their people right now other than, you know, kidnapping millions of Uyghurs and taking them to a re-education camp? That shit is real and it's really happening. And I think those people are irredeemably evil, right? Just because they have a good home life or whatever. Like, I'm not really sure what you want out of the villains to be like, well, they had that teeny tiny bit of Darth Vader level goodness that they could have been redeemed. Like, I'm not sure what you're getting at, I guess.
Not every one of them is going to be evil. So there are going to be people who are just doing their jobs, but all the fingermen that you see. The
doctor?
Yeah, the doctor was good. I would like more of her.
Yeah. Cool.
Can't have
her. So she was there?
She's dead, damn it.
Yeah. I killed you 10 minutes ago. I'm not some comic book villain. So, anyway,
right?
Because that's a different Alan Moore problem.
Every fingerman you see is just a horrible person that like kills children or it's about to rape Natalie Portman or all of those things. Like there were people like the cop that was just a moral person trying to make their way through the world.
Okay.
And I think is just the bad guys are just the Northfire party that are comically bad without any of the ambiguity that apparently was there in the comic. It's like I would have enjoyed that story better with more of the ambiguity between them. So
I mean, I think
and
it
that's
probably
what I wanted
makes,
before I even knew it was in the comic.
It probably makes a measure of sense that if you're going to go with the evil people, it would be the personal fingermen rather than the cops, who are going to be more of your everyday citizen. And the fingermen are the kind of people you're going to want to hire for this sort of, well, let's just call it, totalitarianism. And so I imagine since Creedy's the guy who runs it, he probably looks for that kind of person, more or less.
Yeah, but this is not I mean, even from real life, right? The cops, in these it's fascist storytelling, or in real life, I guess. The cops they're more separate, and then there's the secret police that are monitoring the cops and everybody else, and that's and the reason why there are these comically evil, but they don't. We see them behind closed doors, right? The public don't see that, and even we see how the public gets waken up by V and gets to like you see them how they're just like living their lives, and then we check in with these characters again and again, how they get more and more disillusioned with what's going on as the movie progresses. It's I mean, and that's probably a part of the message of the movie is all it takes for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing.
And even the army at the end, they don't just unload.
Right. Yeah, like they completely freeze, which I thought was interesting. Like they completely freeze when they don't have, evil coming from headquarters, right? Like they didn't tell us to shoot, therefore we're just going to stand here, which thank God, right? In a big way, but it just kind of shows you like a lot of them, are cogs in the wheel, and we were following orders and blah blah blah, but I think it's also kind of the point of the final montage at the end where you see all of them, basically, to use what Andreas said, they were awakened. They were, they all realized what was happening, right? V kind of brought in the fact that, these guys aren't doing anything for you. You are only being oppressed. And if you stand up to them, you will be liberated. Like that's all that it takes. It also takes one guy to like run around behind the scenes and have all of them murdered. But, other than that, if you just stand up to them, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's had a huge, like, real life pop culture impact, right? It's a very popular movie. I wouldn't say it's the reason that Anonymous exists, but it certainly is big part of their image, right?
Right. Yeah, they took the imagery for a reason. So,
and from that point on, that's what led to a very popular show like Mr. Robot. That's based on Anonymous, partly. That's a big inspiration for that show. I mean, it's had a very large impact. This movie, probably more than the comic book, I guess.
Well,
that's because it's a movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things because like Alan Moore, like he was kind of in with DC to have his stuff published, right? But like a lot of his stuff didn't necessarily hit the mainstream. But I mean, it depends on your perspective, right? There's obviously like a huge comic book following, and he's a big subsection of that. But it's still not nearly as well known as who's Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, Iron Man now. But again, like even Iron Man and the Avengers were kind of like a B or a C string for Marvel, behind the X-Men, at least during their comic book runs and stuff. Right. There's a reason why those got sold off first, and Marvel kept the rights to everybody else, right? Like
nobody wanted
because yeah. Right. And because Spider-Man and the X-Men were more well known. So yeah. I don't know. So like one of the other things that I was going to respond to earlier was just the whole, like, him being more of an anarchist and more of an anti-hero and a villain type as well, because like, his rhetoric is to be applauded in a lot of ways. The whole, government should, people shouldn't be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people, stuff like that. He gets a lot of really good one-liners in there, but like it being a movie, like certainly, we could have covered more events over the course of a year or something like that. But like the whole he didn't kill innocents or blah blah blah. Like he didn't do that directly per se. But I was thinking about the scene where he takes over the broadcast studio, right? And basically a dude gets gunned down. Like he had no problem using them as human shields and some of these other things. So like there's a lot of deplorable things that he does, right? So like that's where I'm saying like he's, for lack of a better word, he's the hero of the movie, right? He's definitely the protagonist, but he's definitely not squeaky clean. He's definitely unhinged. He does a lot of crazy, terrible things, right? So like it's important to address those along the way so we don't like say, okay, he's very much the hero and what a watered down story and whatever, right? Because he was going to blow up that building with everybody inside at one point. They just happened to defuse it in the movie. So like I think there are a lot of things
that's
where it's
kind
like
of ambiguous. I feel like it could also just have been not set to blow up.
Maybe.
As
far as they were concerned, it was real though.
Yeah, as far as they knew it was real.
As far as they knew, but I actually thought, maybe I misremembered, but I thought it was a dummy. I don't think it was going to blow up, but maybe I really remember.
No, the stupid director, the media director, somehow he was going to cut the green wire and then cuts the red wire and then it stops.
And then implausibly it works. But like that's why maybe I missed something this time around again. But I swear something confirmed that it was just a dummy. That was just theater. It went to zero. And then nothing happened because nothing was going to happen. And I thought that was the point.
Maybe I missed it in like a briefing to Sutler or something, right? Where they were breaking down all of his stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know when else they would have addressed it.
At least, maybe more.
Yeah. Anyway, so
it certainly is a theory that's I just googled. It's people have discussed this before. I can see that.
I guess it depends
real.
Which one's more true to the character? That he would, are we doing the movie character or the comic book character? Because if it was the comic book character, it absolutely was going to blow up. But if it was the movie character, I guess you could squint and look sideways and say it was all for theater because he focuses on that. But again, he still definitely kills plenty of people in the movie. So
if killing people's wrong, then I don't want to do that.
Well then. That's Jersey for you, so
definitely.
Yeah, like how many? What's your average body count on the way to work? I think is the follow-up question there, right? So,
well, if I was actually coming from Jersey, I'd have to go through Staten Island, then Brooklyn and Queens. It would be a very high body count.
Do you guys think this movie would have been better set in an American setting than in England?
No, I'm very tired of American settings for a lot of these types of things.
Yeah, well, it was Alan Moore's complaint, right? That a lot of the themes were very much more Americanized instead of things that the Brits would be dealing with. So, yeah, because for some reason it seems like a lot of British dystopian types of stuff. The answer to a totalitarian government is anarchy instead of just like a rebalancing of the government, or maybe even a libertarianism where it's like, yes, government's okay, but small and not impactful or something, right? And I guess it's the difference in what you romanticize, right? But for some reason, it seems like a lot of stuff coming out of the UK, like apocalypse happens, it's either fascism or anarchy, right? There is no in between. There is no, the people banding together to make life better. It's leave me the hell alone.
Where's the story where they go back to the monarchy?
Yeah, right. So,
because Buckingham Palace is ends up being the most fortified and well-defended place in the country at the time, and they just start taking over again.
Well, yeah, because I think that they realize deep down in their soul that the only difference between the monarchy and totalitarianism is the show, right? It's the parade that comes along with the monarchy. Like, it is totalitarianism. It's just also the lie that they tell you to make the medicine go down, right? Like in a monarchy, you have those powdered wigs and those red uniforms, and that's the kind of soldiers that you march down the main street, as opposed to a totalitarianism. It's goose stepping German, that it's a little on the nose, right? But ultimately, like, what's the difference, right, between a monarchy and totalitarianism? It may be the hereditary nature and the fact that I lied and told you that God made me divinely able to rule. Like, it's kind of a hair splitting, right? So,
yeah.
I just pissed off all of England, so we got China and England on the list today. So,
who else could get mad?
Sorry, maybe even the Commonwealth. I wonder if any Canadians or Australians are really mad about it right now. So
they're asleep.
You do have a weird connection with the British Royals for some reason. So one would think they would get past that.
Yeah.
What? We can't get past it here in America. What are you talking about? And we're the ones who revolted first.
Damn colonials. I think he says that in the movie, actually.
Ass Erica. That's right. I said it. Ass Erica. I didn't catch that the first 20 times watching it, but I caught it this time. I was like, that's fucking hilarious. So it's such a petulant, petty thing. Where
he stands
let's
there.
Go down there and wheat in the harbor. He makes
his own monologue in the shower. It's like, how self-absorbed is this guy?
Right. Working himself up by watching himself.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. I mean, for me, it's such a good movie. It's perfection to me. But there are some valid criticism, and I even noticed some things on my own. So I guess it's not a perfect movie, but it's. I feel like it is still. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to convey
enjoy movies that aren't perfect. It's okay. Not every movie you enjoy has.
But if I were to give it a score, I would give it 10 out of 10.
Right. I was going to say it easily the high 90 percentile, right? So it's yes, we can have quibbles and that sort of thing about, these little details that we would have had. But, it also kind of depends on would any of that have made the movie better or more enjoyable? At the end of the day. So yes, you can think of things that you wanted to change. As much as I like Purfoy, would his performance actually have been better than Hugo Weaving? That's questionable at best, right?
It's hard to beat Hugo Weaving in acting.
Right. Well, and I mean, shit, he wore a fucking mask the entire time. That's the point, right? He's so good with his animations and his voice, being so distinctive. Same with V. Would the movie have actually been better if you saw him blow up a school bus full of kids or something because they were in his way as he was trying to escape? Would that have somehow improved the movie? Would it have been better to find out that the Chancellor actually had a family with a puppy and little kids, and you have these humanistic moments that the director wants to see? I mean, for Christ's sake, Creedy had a garden, right? So how much more, nurturing do you need to see the guy who black bags everybody who says a cross word about the government, right? I don't know, because some of those things, they also cross over into a different genre a little bit, right? This one is very much, 1984, if 1984 had an actual hero, right? Or somebody to actually stand up to the government. I don't know what genre that would be. I'd have to go do some research or whatever, but it is a little bit different. There are some things to be said about having actually black and white stories, right? If you want to see more anti-heroes and everybody being dicks, go watch The Watchmen, I guess. Because nobody has their hands clean at the end of The Watchmen.
Which I very much enjoy The Watchmen.
Right.
But the black and white stories are fine. I enjoy Lord of the Rings too. Sauron does not need a humanistic moment. There's no ambiguity there needed.
Sauron's puppy farm.
Yeah.
No.
He's
not all
just
orcs,
fine being
man.
what he is. Say again?
Not all orcs, man.
Yeah, some of them were just douchebags. They weren't evil,
Yeah.
So
some of them are
but hungry. I mean, I think part of the problem in where 1984 and this movie come in is that as much as anything, they're warnings, right? And they are trying to show you this shit is real or at least possible. That's one of the main things that I focus on. So yeah, absolutely. You've got a sniveling worm who hides behind his microphone and gets people riled up because he enjoys the power of it. but if you caught him in a room and you stepped on his foot, he'd cry like a little girl for like 20 minutes. Like, I think it's important to know the things about these quote unquote powerful people, right? You know, like even Creedy is like movie villain badass at the end, right? Like he's facing off with V and he's like, I got all my dudes with guns and we're gonna put you down. And then like when it comes to it, he's impotent. He's just completely worthless. And I mean, sure, V went into it expecting whatever, and he's the quote unquote hero, and he's got ideas are bulletproof and whatever. But Creedy wasn't effective at all. Like other than stirring up this organization to go black bag literally innocent people who are just trying to live their lives, you know? And so like if anything, the humanistic, you know, imperfect part of the movie is that all of these guys are sniveling crybabies when you catch them alone, which you see time and time again, right? The voice of London, I forget the character's name, right? But he's the first one that gets ganged. Like he falls right on his ass. So he's over there like shouting all this hateful rhetoric and being a badass. And then as soon as V's in his bathroom, he's like, oh shit, you know, like that's the parts that I see. I don't know. Like, I don't need to know if they cuddle a teddy bear at night or whatever. I mean, would make them more humanistic. So
there's also that little subtle, not so subtle snub at the Catholic Church. Like the girl they send over is not up to how they usually. Oh, she's not too old, is she?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and do they? I don't know. Do they identify him as Catholic? Because
he was a bishop.
Like, I know, but what are the Anglicans like? What are their ranks and stuff like that? So that's what I'm saying.
I guess the Catholic versus Anglican, but they look so similar.
Yeah.
Also, he was in a cathedral. I mean,
well, that's because the Anglicans are literally rebranded so that King Henry would be the head of the church. So
right, but if he was involved in Larkhill, would he have been Catholic or not? Because military and government and priest.
Yeah.
England is what? England's Protestant still, right?
Yeah, Anglican.
That's Anglican, yeah.
So that's whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify so that we didn't also piss off the Catholics, because we've already pissed off 1.5 billion other people that
our priests don't look like that, like dressed like that. In Denmark, they were also Protestants.
So, wow! You mean to tell me that people in the British Empire dress a little more ostentatiously than Denmark?
He also speaks Italian, doesn't he? Mea culpa. He's like
that's Latin.
Italian,
but you know what that is?
Yeah,
it's Latin, which is what they do.
Is it Latin? Oh, I thought it was Italian.
They're very similar.
Big. I mean, where do you think this stuff came from? That was the Latin, you know, in the Catholic Mass and all this stuff, and then the Protestants want. I mean, it's a saying; you can still use it. But that was the whole split, you know. They want, you know, let's teach them in English versus. Okay.
You guys are a very weird set of nerds. Sometimes, you know that. So.
Oh, why'd you block the webcam?
Do you want the webcam?
I don't know. I didn't get to see it.
It's probably not a kosher link.
Really? Can't imagine why you would say that.
Luckily, you still got the name.
What would you guys give the movie, actually? That? If you were a score out of 10?
I don't know. I'd be okay with giving it an 8. I'd probably give it something like a 7.5. I mean,
yes.
I like it. It was never one of my favorites, but I always enjoyed it when it was on. So, as far as, you know, if I was given it more subjectively, if I was given it, you know, a more objective, like based on flaws and plot holes and stuff, it would actually probably be about the same. It holds up pretty well.
I must be an idiot because I didn't catch any plot holes. So can you fill me in on what the hole was?
No, that's what I'm saying. I can't really think of it.
Okay.
Like I said, the biggest contrivance is towards the end, like I said, with him finding them after a year of searching and things like that. But in general, I don't think there's anything really particularly egregious in this movie.
Gotcha. Well, because it was one of the things from the trivia from one of Alan Moore's things where it was like, oh, there's the plot hole. I forget. He says it obviously way neater than I am, but he basically talks about how blatant and obvious the plot holes are. And I'm like, I must be like a small child then, because I don't see I don't see that big of a problem. And then the fact that they would kind of like reuse the characters in other character moments, right? Towards the end, and you see the little girl get set up like 3 times through the movie and everything. Like those are great. The parallels between her parents being taken and Gordon being taken, like all of those things to me add to the movie. So that's why I was just like, they paid a lot of attention to detail, in my opinion. I didn't catch any blatant plot holes, but yeah. I don't know. I mean, if I were to do it honestly, like I said, I quibble a little bit, and I would say it's not perfect, but the more that I talk about it, the less I have a problem with it. Like maybe we could argue about the fact that, he is a villain, and yet they try and romanticize and cutesy that up a little bit. But yeah, I'm in the high, 9.8-ish, is probably the lowest I'd go, right? Where it's just like, I couldn't point to a specific thing anymore and just be like the action, I was saying, like the action to me now seems super corny, right? Comparatively, the fact that V is way overly verbose, a problem that I also have, like those things threaten the movie multiple times, but then the characters kind of bring it back, and it just becomes
there's a difference between you talk a lot, he thinks he's a poet, and I've had people try to be him in conversation, talking at me, like quoting entire chapters of Shakespeare. It doesn't work. It's annoying, and maybe I hold that against this movie because it definitely spawned more of them. There's a difference between his open monologue with all the V words and 48 and like 5 minutes, blah blah blah, and the appropriate reaction is, "You're a crazy person. Go away." But people didn't quite get that, and they just thought that guy was cool. I'm gonna wear a mask and dress all in black with a long trench coat and quote Shakespeare. And it's like, yeah, I'm fancy, and just it was cringy, and there was too many of them. And
the third line of my notes, because we know that I like stream of consciousness. He's a loony, comma, a neckbeard, comma, LOL. Because he's absolutely a neckbeard, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah, I know we don't know if he's bearded, and he's been horribly burned, right? So that's beside the point. But exactly what I'm talking about.
Is a thing that's outside of the actual beardedness.
Yes, right. So, excuse me, but so he's very it's funny because the other thing that I want to say is like along that line, it's like he's a weeb, but for the UK, right? Like everything that's come out of like Europe and the whole like Count of Monte Cristo, or some of the music, the Shakespeare quotes, all of those things, it's got weeb energy.
You said aficionado.
Sure. But I got to tell you, as many times as I make pop culture references, I don't show up and start like throwing Han Solo lines at the girls and be like, well, I'm an aficionado, like
that isn't how you got your wife.
So. I know. It's like, how did you get her?
No. So
okay.
No, it was zombies actually.
Check with her later.
But, yeah. She's just going to tell you I was cute and I had long hair and, like something dark side. I don't know. But yeah,
hey, what's up, honey?
Yeah, there are very few like entire paragraphs that I've committed to memory that I could just like spout anyway in the first place, let alone like, a humble vaudevillian villain, blah, blah, blah. And is like the cape and just anyway. Yeah, it's fucking ridiculous. And I'm glad that they had Evie call it out, because that's literally what saves that line, that scene. So
and that one line is the thing that kind of like, it's as a meme that goes in my head of just listening to people. It's like, so you're a crazy person, right? It's just
right. I'm quite certain they'll say so. Which also saves him, right? The fact that he's kind of like aware of his problem, so he can't stop himself, but he's aware.
Self-aware, yeah.
Yeah. So
he's
like, I don't know. I might be a crazy person. I did blow up a detention facility and light myself on fire to escape. Is that something a crazy person would do?
Apropos, it's apparently called an Anglophile. He's an Anglophile.
Of course.
I looked at the chat.
But it's but like he's also a native, right? So it gets weird, right? Like I don't know. I might get canceled by Japan next if I continue this conversation. So
not Japan, I'll just send you cute stuff. Because Japan is also full of Anglophiles.
I mean, that's fine.
They like Europe, like Britain and France, and they're very enamored with. I say it's more China, but they're very enamored with the Copenhagen and an old author we have in The Little Mermaid. And we get a lot of tourists. Next, while we weren't recording, we're doing Dune, right?
Yep.
No. We got to watch The Count of Monte Cristo. I'm speaking for Ben since he's not here, because that was totally what I was going to bring up with him. I was like, how's this movie in black and white? And you haven't suggested it yet, man. So, but yeah, we should probably do Dune because it's going to fall off by...
Yeah, that's what we decided last time when we were trying to talk Constantine and kept getting interrupted by Dune talk. It was like, okay, the 20th of November, we'll watch Dune. And Ben's suggestion was that we also watch the 1984 version and go through that experience.
And read and have read the book if possible. Like I think Drake just read the book. Justin's read the book before.
She has not read the book. That's the problem.
I have read the Dune book.
No, sorry. I thought you were talking about 1984. That's what I was.
Oh no! I meant the Dune.
No, he's focused on the same now.
I'm not sure. You were talking about the 1984 Dune, which. Yeah. Would explain the cross-pollination in my brain.
Okay, yes. She's talking about 1984 Dune.
Yes, gotcha.
Have you read it, E.G.?
No. The full extent of my Dune knowledge comes from a computer game I had when I was, like 10.
I played that game.
Yeah, there was the battle game, and you could be one of the 3 colored factions, and that was it.
Nice.
I enjoyed it. I always picked blue because blue is my favorite color, and I was a very simple child. But
still is wearing a blue shirt.
Yeah, I was going to say, definitely gotten far from that one. Yeah, the 1984 Dune is also on HBO, so I might have to watch both of those in the next 2 weeks. But
I don't know if I'm prepared for the David Lynch's version of Dune. I tried watching it a long time ago, and it's like, this is weird. And in the first 20 minutes, I just dipped out.
It's called Dune. So, like, Dune is fucking weird. I'm sorry. I love it. Don't get me wrong, but it is fucking weird.
It's actually really hard getting through the book.
Sure.
It's really hard. I'm struggling.
Yeah, it took me a long time. I mean, it took me longer than normal. At that time of my life, I was reading, like, large books in, like, 3 days. And, like, this was a version I had was very thin. It must have had a really small font. But it took me, like, a week to get through because I wasn't sure if I was enjoying it or not.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll try and re-listen to it while I'm working and stuff, and see what happens, and if it comes out better. But yeah, I remember it being fairly impenetrable. But if it's like my 3rd time through, and then I watch the movies and whatnot, then because it's like book, movie, book again, 3rd time. But yeah. Be like, oh yeah, I can kind of visualize these characters now that I've got actors to associate with them, right? Instead of like,
That didn't help me with American Gods, and I actually kind of liked the first couple episodes of it, and then it got stupid again. But I still, to this day, have not gotten more than 20 pages into that book. I couldn't do it.
I couldn't do that book when I realized that the main character's name was Shadow Moon. That was a bit.
Yeah, I was just like, no, stop! I can't get past this bullshit. I can't.
That is exactly the moment when I put it together of like, okay, his wife's name was Laura Moon, and they're calling him Shadow. I just no.
Wow, I couldn't do it.
I never read it or watched the show. I just know vaguely what it's about.
The concept's fine, but
my husband read the whole book, and he said it was fine, but he just didn't care about the characters. Or the main character much. He quite enjoyed everything else going on.
Okay. I think that's it. Can we wrap it up?
Yeah. See you in 2 weeks when we talk about Cody's least favorite movie that he's seen recently. So
He's not even. I'm not seeing him in chat today, so I guess
maybe he's sleeping. Once in a while, he needs to do that.
No one watches this one,
except for Cody and the person
we've got
who really wants.
3 distinct fans in the chat, like 3 separate.
We had 4, but the director nuked one of them.
Yeah.
Right, and one of those people in the chat really wants to see the lettuce pizza that Andreas eats. So questionable quality there.
8-1 today. No, it's delicious, dude.
What you do on your own channel is your business. Bro. Keep that evil away from me.